Good evening. The news increasingly seems to be full of stories about crimes involving sexual abuse or sexual assault. Rarely do we get to hear from a victim. Tonight, in a CTV News exclusive, a victim of sexual assault is speaking out. Ryan Ashworth, now 21, was sexually assaulted as a child by James Pichet. Pichet recently sentenced for 19 offenses, including making child pornography and sexual assault. Joining us with the important story tonight is our Stephanie Visati.
Jim, Ryan Ashworth came to us last October wanting to tell his story. At the time, a publication ban protected victims, preventing him from doing this. But Ryan is an amazing man. With the same bravery and perseverance he displayed in speaking out against his abuser, Ryan fought to be able to tell his story. 2 weeks ago, the court granted Ryan's request. We should warn you, some of the information may be disturbing to some viewers. Here is his story.
I went to the park near my house and I hung myself from a tree.
Ryan Ashworth describes the night he tried to end his life.
I passed out and I woke up in the middle of the night. I guess the rope snapped. Something I've never told anybody.
He says the attempt followed years of sexual abuse and being called a liar. Ashworth says he was introduced to a man named James Pichet when he was a child.
The family liked him. Everybody liked him. He was close with everybody, and especially the kids.
Ashworth says his mother and Pichet met while working at a fast food restaurant. He says Pichet soon became a close family friend.
Didn't have a lot of male role models when I was a kid, so I thought he was cool.
After a few years, Pichet moved in with the Ashworth family.
There was one night I woke up, and he was in my room. He was standing over me, and I was scared. I didn't really know what was going on, and I pretty well convinced myself that it was a bad dream or a nightmare until it started happening more and more frequently. It became more clear that I wasn't dreaming and it was actually happening.
Ashworth was 11 years old. He says the abuse continued night after night.
I would lie there scared, not making a sound, not moving, until I could work up the courage to kind of roll over or make a sound like I was awake. Maybe he'd leave. It never went past fondling, as far as I'm aware. I couldn't let him know that I was awake. I didn't know what he would do to me to keep me quiet. I was terrified.
He says he told his family when he was 14, but no one believed him.
I had to put myself in a lot of awkward situations and still laugh with the family and joke and sleep in his tent when we went camping.
He says his family said there was no proof, so it wasn't reported to police at the time.
They said it was his word against mine, and because I couldn't remember exact dates and I wouldn't tell them exact details, they told me the cops wouldn't do anything for me.
Months later, Ashworth says Pichet was asked to move out. He says his parents told Pichet they didn't want to make their son feel uncomfortable in his own home. Years passed until September 2014. Pichet was arrested in conjunction with a province-wide internet child exploitation bust. Ashworth then reached out to police.
I was definitely emotional when the detective said he believed me. I spent 6 years thinking that police wouldn't take my side.
A year later, Ashworth faced Pichet in provincial court.
Even though he was sitting behind that booth, I was terrified.
Ashworth addressed the court and read his victim impact statement.
My knees were weak. And even just writing it, I was basically just letting down every single wall that I've put up. Letting everything out. I traveled into parts of my head that I never wanted to go to.
Pichet had already pleaded guilty to 19 charges, including making child pornography, sexual interference, and sexual assault. Judge Lloyd Dean said to the court, "Prey upon innocent children and you will pay the price." Pichet's price, 9 years. Ashworth says his is a life sentence.
And in the end, it doesn't matter how much time you get, because I'm going to have to deal with this for the rest of my life. I very well may never be okay.
There's much more to Ashworth's story. Tomorrow we'll hear from Ashworth as he describes his healing process and how he hopes his story will encourage other victims to come forward. And Jim, this is a hard story to tell, but sometimes it's a story that needs to be told.
All right, Stephanie, thank you. Well, last night here we introduced you to Ryan Ashworth. The 21-year-old is a victim of sexual assault, first abused at the hands of a family friend when he was 11. Mr. Ashworth says he's attended counseling to help him cope with the mental pain since his abuser's sentencing, and this is the important first step in his healing process. Joining us with the second part of her report is our Stephanie Mazzotti.
Jim, many associate women as the victim in sexual assault cases, but that's not always the case. One counselor I spoke with says 1 in 6 males are assaulted by the time they turn 18. Ashworth is one of them. He's hoping his story will help other men come forward to start their healing journey, as Ashworth has.
We're supposed to be tough, we're supposed to be strong.
Ryan Ashworth says for a victim of sexual assault, that's impossible.
There's a big myth that men can't be victims. We're not supposed to talk about it, we're supposed to deal with it.
Ashworth wants to end that stereotype.
I pretty well convinced myself that it was a bad dream or a nightmare until it started happening more and more frequently. It became more clear that I wasn't dreaming and it was actually happening.
After being sexually assaulted by a family friend for years, he's now sharing his story with the public. His abuser, James Pichet, pled guilty to 19 sexual offenses in July of 2015. He's serving 9 years in jail. But when the abuse occurred, Ashworth says no one believed him.
Because I couldn't remember exact dates and I wouldn't tell them exact details, they told me the cops wouldn't do anything for me.
Today, he says he wants to stand up for victims of abuse.
I would never wish the pain, the suffering on anybody. No one deserves it. If I could help somebody, if I could help at least one person, then I didn't go through what I went through for nothing.
Since Pichet's sentencing, Ashworth has been coming here.
Counseling's hard. You know, there's days that I believe it's helping. There's days I believe that it doesn't. You know, there's days I don't want to go because I don't want to think about it.
Eric Boekhoven from Insight Counseling Service has been assisting male victims like Ashworth for more than a decade.
As much as I've worked with hundreds of men, 100 or 200 or 300 is just the tip of the iceberg. When the world includes abuse, then the belief is that the world is abusive.
Ashworth is one of his patients.
Like most men, there was a wariness of sitting down and talking to an older male, revealing some very intimate details about his life.
Boekhoven says there's one important message he tells victims who come to him for the first time.
They're not alone. That there are other men out there that are walking the same healing journey, and by connecting these men together, they tend to normalize their experience.
He encourages victims to share their story with other men facing the same struggles. He says that can mean the difference between life and death.
Suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Boekhoven says the healing process is a constant journey.
If somebody breaks their arm, physically they completely heal, but mentally do they still remember that they had a broken arm at one time? Well, sexual abuse may be something similar to that.
He says positivity is key.
Grieving from the abuse and healing from the abuse is absolutely possible.
And he says there are many services available for male victims across Windsor, Essex.
You know, we heal one man at a time. We heal society one man at a time.
Although counseling continues to help Ashworth, he says every day is a struggle.
Just because I'm not handling things right now doesn't mean I won't be okay. I may not see the end of the tunnel, but it doesn't mean it's not there.
Again, Ashworth is encouraging victims, both men and women, to speak out and seek help. He says no one should deal with this alone. For services available across Windsor, Essex, head to the links page on our website, windsor.ctvnews.ca. And obviously, Jim, a very, very brave individual.
What viewers will appreciate but may not know, Stephanie, is that this young man had wanted to tell his story, yet was being protected by the legal system, and you had to go to some lengths in order to make it possible for him to say what he wanted to say to our audience.
Yes, there was initially a publication ban, and it's been actually about a 6-month process in order for him to get approval from the judge in order to share his story. And as you can imagine, doing that was worth it in every sense.
Very important story. Stephanie, thank you. Stephanie Mazzotti tonight.